This video we're going to talk about adding and subtracting fractions. So remember, a fraction has a numerator and a denominator. So in this case, the numerator is 3 and the denominator is 5. What that basically means, right, just so you remind, so you have something that's divided up into five equal parts, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we are talking about 3 of them. Right? So if you were going to add something that was also in fifths, right, plus 1/5, then you'd be saying 3/5 plus 1/5 gives you 4/5. Right? So we're still talking about fifths. We have 3/5 plus 1/5 is 4/5. Subtraction works the same way, right? If you have 4/5 and you subtract 1/5, right? Here we have 4/5. 4 of these things are highlighted in yellow. We take away one of them, and we end up with 3 of these things that are highlighted in yellow, 3/5. So as long as the denominator is the same, you're just working with the numerator, right? However, if you have a situation where you are changing the denominator, so if it was something like 3/5 plus 1/4, well, that's kind of confusing because here you have 3/5 and then you have 1/4, right? That means you have the same thing and you're dividing it up into fourths, right? And so a fourth is not the same size as a fifth, right? That's not the same size as that. So you can't add those things. So what you have to do is you kind of have to break apart your fifths and fourths into something where it's the same thing. And that means that the denominator, right, these have to be the same. Now a very common mistake, and I'm going to do this in red so you can see it's a mistake. This is a mistake, equals 3 plus 1 equals 3, 5 plus 4 equals 9. No, you don't want to do that. Now, it's confusing because that's actually how multiplication works. You do multiply the numerator and the denominator, but you can't do that with adding. So part of it is just remembering how adding works. You have to add the same thing. Why is my thing coming up? Come on. You have to be adding the same thing. So let's erase that. Okay. So what do we have to do in this case? We have to take 3/5, and I like to do this in vertical format. It's a little easier. 3/5 and 1/4. And we have to find another denominator which we can use some sort of form of 1, just like we did for simplifying, right? We're going to be multiplying by some sort of form of 1 times some sort of form of 1 that will get us, well, that's supposed to be a 1, that will get us to our new denominator. And the way we want to do that is we want to look at what are multiples of 5 and what are multiples of 4. So multiples of 5, I'm going to write them out. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe that's enough. Multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Aha, you see that there is the same multiple. So we can use 20 as a common multiple of both 5 and 4. And then we have to say to ourselves, what do we have to multiply 5 by to get 20? We have to multiply by 4. What do we have to multiply 4 by to get 20? We have to multiply by 5. So this becomes a form of 1, which is 4 over 4. This becomes 5 over 4, 5 over 5. Sorry, let me say that again. 4 over 4 is the form of 1. 5 over 5 is the form of 1. And then 3 times 4 equals 12. 1 times 5 equals 5. So our new problem is now, instead of 3/5 plus 1/4, it's 12/20 plus 5/20. Both of them have a denominator of 20, so we can add the numerator, and we would get 17/20. So the answer to the problem, 3/5 plus 1/4, is 17/20. Now we would have to reduce that if that were not in lowest terms. Okay, so one of the things you might think to yourself is, oh, this is pretty easy to find this common factor. Why are we doing this where we're finding the least common multiple? Why don't we just multiply 5 and 4? We know we have to get something that's going to be a multiple of both 5 and 4 if we do that. And that does work, although you end up with some fairly large numbers that way. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. So let me give you an example. let's say I were adding 5/12 plus 2/9. Okay, so I could multiply 9 and 12 together. It's 108, and that would work. 108. Great. My form of 1 in this case would be 9, right? 9 times 8, 9 times 12 is 108, so 9 times 5 is 45. My form of 1 here would be 5. So 5 over 5 gives me 10 over 108. I add 108. I add them together. I get 55 over 108. Oops, I did that wrong. Sorry, this has to be 9 times 5 is not 108. I don't know why I was thinking that. 9 times 12. 9 times 12 is 108. Okay, so I get 24 over here. Sorry. Yeah, I make mistakes doing this all the time because it's very error prone. So now I'm adding 45 and 24, and that gives me 69, 108. But the problem is now I have to reduce this, and it should be not that obvious how to do it. You have to divide by 3 over 3. Kind of a pain, and I really don't want to do that because there's an easier way. If I take the same problem, 5 over 12 plus 2 over 9, right, plus 2 over 9, and find the common multiple. Now I can do this in my head, but if you can't, you can just write things out, right? 12, the next multiple, oops. The next multiple is, so 12, next one will be 24, then 36, then 48. Now let's try 9, 18, 27, 36. Aha! I've got a much smaller number than 36 that I can work with. So my common denominator can be 36 instead. And my form of 1, so times, is going to be, in this case, 3. And in this case, it's going to be 4. Running out of room there, sorry about that, equals, okay, so 2 times 4 is 8, 5 times 3 is 15. So now I'm going to be adding, instead of 45 108s and 24 108s, I'm going to be adding 15 36s and 8 36s, and I end up with 23 36s. As it turns out, if I divided 69 over 108 by 3 over 3, I would get the same thing. So that's another, it just depends on how many steps you want to do and what you want to do. But the final result is going to be 23 over 36. So again, just to summarize, you can add fractions when their numerator and denominator are the same. You can subtract when the numerator and denominator is the same. If they're not the same, you have to make them the same by changing the denominator, by multiplying the denominators by some common, to get to some common denominator. So if it's 5 and 4, the common denominator is 20. And I would multiply by 4 over 4. If I have a more complicated one, like 5 over 12 plus 2 over 9, I find the common multiple by listing out all the multiples, and then I make that the common denominator, and then I have to change my numerator to fit the common denominator. And that's how you add and subtract fractions.